Hello buddy, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 Quick Match gameplay. This was the second match I actually got in against a player called Brennis, and it was just like the last match where it was good old Dowie against Tomb Kings. This was another pretty fun, intense match of Empire against Vampire count, so a bit of a classic match up there. And I think the builds here, especially my opponent's build, are actually pretty cool. And I didn't want to break it down and go over it because normally I don't do back-to-back. If I end up against the same player back-to-back, I usually try not to just have those replays going back-to-back. But I thought both of these games were really good, and so I didn't want to cover them. And yeah, without further ado, let's hop right in and onto the Void of Hell Fen here and discuss what happens. So for my lord here, I did decide to go with a pretty conventional choice as far as I'm concerned. Usually at least as far as my builds go. For my lord, I did bring Karl. He does have, of course, Hold the Line. He's got Foe Seeker, Stand Your Ground, Reichland Runefang, as well as Golem Raz. So on a horse like this, he's an absolute monster. He'll be able to dumpster any large lords. He can even lay the smackdown on, say, a Blood Dragon Lord, and he's really, really potent. He's really quite a piece of work. Alongside him, he is backed by a Jade Wizard to provide heals. For him and the cavalry contingent, we do have Life Bloom, we do have Earthblood, as well as Regrowth. Unfortunately, we're not able to cram in a Power Stone, but hey, what can you do? And then alongside him, a Warrior Priest who's kitted out to the teeth. He's got Banner of Eternal Flame. In case my opponent went with, say, Bargulf, so he'd have some fire damage. Benediction for the leadership, which is, believe it or not, pretty critical for Empire. I found having that extra 8 leadership is just so nice, and you really can't underestimate it. Hammer of Sigmar, once again, another AoE buff. Soulfire, as well as Shield of Faith, and then Scroll of Power, so we can recast all of our abilities once in the battle, which is really, really awesome. Alongside them, Cavalry Contingent, Royal Tough Group Fights, and Demi Fights with Halberds, providing a massive anti-large stopping power here. They're going to be really, really monstrous. 2 units of Outriders with grenade launchers, and then 2 units of Outriders. So we've got abilities to shoot at enemy flyers, something that can run away from zombies, and also something that if my opponent brings, say, a bunch of Blood Knights, we can kind of flank around, get side shots, harass them with Outriders a good bit. And our Outriders with grenade launchers will compensate, hopefully, for a lack of a proper front line and proper anti-infantry options. Because we really, our front line here is trash. A bunch of spearmen backed by the Sigmar Sons, they'll hold a good bit, but really, they're not going to be able to hold against this front line that my opponent brought. For Brennis's build, he did bring quite a Vanguard force. He's got the Feaster in the Dusk, a pretty awesome unit, if I do say so myself. I do think they're one of those hidden gems on the Vampire Counts roster. You almost never see them, but they're just so good. They've got Stalk, they've got slightly better mobility, of course, and then the usual poison and good weapon strength of that are normal on crit rules. We also do have Chillgeist, so these guys surprisingly potent in a situation where I don't have any magic damage, which is pretty crazy. And of course, they are respectable melee stat wise. They've got very high AP. They've got fire. Actually, they only don't have fire. They've only got magic damage. But they do also have the Chilling Aura, which will make them a much better unit for shutting down skirmishers potentially, especially alongside the Dire Pack, who's over here. Finally, for the rest of my opponent's build, or the main line, he does have a single unit of Black Knights here, looking to harass backlines. Though unfortunately for my opponent, there is no backline to harass really. And then a front line composed of a mix of zombies, Tithe, Graveguard with great weapons, Graveguard, 2 Corpse Guards backing them up, a single White King to sort of stiffen up the line, and then a bunch of Skeleton Spears. We also do have the White King armed with, I think it's the Scabrath, which is his unique item, or Scab's Wrath, which is not a weak weapon. It can definitely do some damage if you get a nice little cast of it, especially against something like, say, Spearman. My opponent also did bring a whole bunch of bats to harass my backline, and Isabella, who's pretty lightly kitted out. She does have Raised Dead, Invocation in the Neck, Red Fury, Master Beguilement, and Blood Chalice of Bathory. So combined with the White King, potentially some good value there. You can see immediately we are forced to fall back from the bats because our Outriders did get pounded a good bit. And so we were actually forced to commit our Demigryphs a little bit here and force them off, which is not exactly what I wanted, but at the same time, it's no big loss. We're not going to exactly take any damage here. And we did save our Outriders from taking any premature losses. In the meantime, on the flank, you can see these Feasters in the Dust did get caught out, and those Outriders with grenade launchers, of course, paying their dues, just demolishing these poor units. Feasters in the Dusk, that's not what they want to be doing. 10 armor, really cannot stand it. You can see already we're maneuvering, and as I saw these Chillgeists, I suddenly realized this is going to be tough because we do not have magic, we don't have any source of damage. I didn't even bring Awakening of the Wood, which I sometimes do try to bring with the Jade Wizard because we don't have fire, but we don't have it, so we're in some deep, deep trouble. My opponent's collapsing on me from all flanks. And now the Sigmar Sons, they'll hold for a good bit. But the Graveyard with their weapons are going to munch through them. Over here, the Tithe and all these units will mulch through these Spearmen, though they are getting bogged down a good bit. And over here, you can see the Feasters in the Dust getting hit by an Invocation in the Heck and going to start munching through these Spears, especially as the second unit of Spears comes barreling through. And the big problem right now is that my opponent is not taking very much damage. I'm not really... So my front line is getting chewed apart. And as long as my opponent stays safe, as long as he stays kind of a little bit cautious, there's not much I can do with my cavalry. These guys are kind of useless. They're more of a defensive unit. So really the only units I have that are super effective here are the Outriders with grenade launchers. And the Outriders, you can see, are getting shut down. My opponent very cleverly sort of pulling back with his cavalry, making sure not to commit in a position where my demigryphs would completely compromise them, and then trying to dive in on my Outriders, get some cheeky picks on the flanks, which is definitely not a bad idea. Unfortunately for him, though, the Outriders with grenade launchers do have other ideas, and the Feasters in Dusk, in like 2 volleys, get completely dumpstered. And this really does show, I think, the staying power of this unit. The Outriders with grenade launchers are just so disgusting. They really are no laughing matter. Now, as my opponent does start pushing through, you can see the Outriders unloading on Isabella now. He is dodging back and forth. Very well played there. But while that is happening, we are finally able to land a bit of a charge here on this cavalry here. We are trying to sort of push them back, zone them away. And, you know, it's working a little bit. You can see the Feasters in Dusk there disintegrating, and we are able to push these troops away, buy ourselves some time. My opponent, though, does countercharge here, so he is going to push back around, trying to tie me up. And as he does so, you can see the grenades pouring into the poor Dire Pack. And they are going to be able to tear down probably some of these Outriders with grenade launchers. But in comes the Shield of Faith, in comes the Hammer of Sigmar, buffs going down all around, and down comes the Rain. And now the Soulfire, not that good of an ability normally, damage-wise, but it actually is going to do some stuff to the Shield Geist here. And magic resistance means that these Shield Geist are doing almost nothing on the charge, which is important in the protracted engagement. In the meantime, the Rain from the Outriders with grenade launcher is coming in, and you can see with the Warrior Priest in the pits here, we are getting a huge amount of buffs. And do keep in mind, these buffs, the buffs are going to last a while, and then once they expire, we can either use Karl Franz or we can use a second round of buffs from the Warrior Priest to once again bombard this pocket, and that's really, really important. So you can see the Warrior Priest there is being hit by Stand Your Ground for Karl. You can see the grenade launchers pouring in, and grenades are actually going to do a lot of damage to these lightly armored and unarmored troops, despite the physical resist there. You can see Scroll of Power being popped, and in comes the second round of abilities, and we haven't even used Karl Franz's Reikland Runefang. And this is one of those reasons I absolutely adore. When I say adore, I really do mean I absolutely adore Karl Franz's Reikland Runefang comboed with Warrior Priest, because you get so much buff edge going on constantly. And oftentimes having more units isn't necessarily that valuable when you already have a good sort of blob. It's just getting more out of that blob. Unfortunately, though, my opponent here is not sort of simply letting me run over him. He does lose most of his cavalry there. His Dire Pack as well as the Hex Race get blown apart. But Isabella does come down. She's letting the smackdown on me, and we are going to be forced to run with our Outriders. Some spears, which basically my front line has buckled all along, but they're going to be able to escape the Graveguard. There are no bats on them, so they will be able to rally on the periphery and then come back for another go later. And in the meantime, Isabella here trapped in the pits. She does pop Bloodshouts of Authority, trying to keep herself alive, but unfortunately we're just not able to. She's actually going to squeak her way out here, which is pretty nuts. You can see we're trying to beat the snot out of her. She is losing HP at a prodigious rate. And right here, it could be GG if we manage to snipe her out. It could be like a very good situation for us. You can see Bloodshot's healing for so much, basically recovering everything, but she is able to squeeze through her lines and escape us. And with that, we are going to be in for a bit of a pickle. You can see an Earthblood going down. Very useful for me. But in the meantime, the Jade Wizard is trapped over here. He is stuck, and it's kind of dumb. Like, there's like 2 zombies in his way, and he's not able to move past them. But in comes Bella, and she is going to start pounding his face in. And suddenly, things are looking rather grim. Now, certainly balance of power is in my favor, and it's not impossible to deny that. But if my opponent gets removed by Jade Wizard, I have no more healing. My opponent still has quite a bit of healing. He's got summons on Isabella. He can still heal his White King with Blood Chalice, as well as the Invocation of Nag, especially on a blob like this. And with bats and some Black Knights and use like that, there is some potential for him to bring this game back and kind of dumpster my troops. Obviously, he can soak quite a bit of fire from the Outriders. He can potentially rout them off, and you can see the Jade Wizard, they're running away. And so disaster striking for the poor Empire. Fortunately, though, for me, my opponent here really does blob up. Brennus kind of gets clumped up, which is unfortunate, because it does open up the opportunity for my grenade launchers, who are on guard mode, to start dumpstering this pocket. So while the Spearmen here take one for the team, alongside the Warrior Priest, buying time for the rest of the Empire, the cavalry contingent does disengage. We're going to be able to force off the bats, and you can see the Outriders here do pull away. So the loss of the Jade Wizard, not the end of the world. Isabella is now crippled for good. And the rain of grenades continues to come down. I just love the Outriders grenade launch. You can see Reikland Runefang going down. Like I said, those buffs, so potent. And you can see the spears here sitting in reserve, not being forced to commit. The rain of grenades just continuing firing down, 96 and 114 kills. And do keep in mind, not all of these. Normally, I'll say, you know, a lot of these kills are against trash, so ignore them. But in this situation, these kills, they're against Graveguard, they're against Crypt Ghouls. So relatively valuable units. So these guys have already paid for themselves, handily. But now it's a question of, can they pay for themselves against all this infantry, especially with my opponent still having some heals on Isabella. Though you can see she is there getting focused there by the Outriders. So definitely getting some value there. Unfortunately, the bats there getting healed by Invocation of Nehek, which is going to rally them, hopefully. I do believe they will stabilize shortly. And we don't have any more heals, which kind of sucks. But you can see at this point the lines are being redrawn. We are trying to harass Isabella a little bit. poke away at her, try to put her into crumbling, and perhaps force her to like run away as far as possible. And in the meantime, my opponent is kind of reforming his ranks. Balance power definitely in my favor, but he is reforming ranks here. And we are doing basically the same. I'm pulling my spears away. I can kite him. Certainly could try to run in with his Black Knights and his White King, but that is begging for disaster because I do have this huge pocket of Demigryphs. I do have the Warrior Priest still, and even without heals, Demigryphs on 19 models, Demigryphs on 22 models actually, backed by Karl and a Warrior Priest are just brutal stuff. And you can see with the Outriders, they are able to force Isabella back, and Red Fury popped. It does give her vigor, so I guess that does make sense. Definitely not where she wants to be in life, though. And I can see this blob here forming, and my opponent's Graveguard, which did overextend pursuing some spears, suddenly finds itself in an ugly spot. And you can see we are able to pop those buffs pretty safely here, because I know that even if I don't get full value out of these buffs, or if it's a little overkill here against these Graveguard, my opponent will still have to deal with Karl Franz and all of his buffs if he gets there. And you can see now these Black Knights are charging in. They do have 15 miles, but the Outriders with grenade launchers pouring death and destruction into their flanks. Outriders normal variant now pouring in with fire and just smushing those guys really badly. Warrior Priest does actually countercharge here. He's going to bog these guys down and start blobbing them. And that's where the grenades are just going to be brutal. And in comes Karl Franz with the steel chair, diving in against the White King, and Stand Your Ground is being popped. So suddenly, very bad stuff. But Master Beguilement used it to counter me. So Karl, you know, he's relying on a lot, and I'm relying a lot here on Karl to do the work, but he's being countered pretty heavily. But we are going to be able to extricate ourselves a little bit as these Graveguard collapse. And in the meantime, my opponent in a bit of a desperate maneuver here, dropping his Fellbats onto the Outriders, trying to shut them down. But we are going to be able to sort of reposition, escape, and start pulling the spears in. So my opponent, a bit of a precarious position here. We are melting them down with the Royal Thorfir fights in the protracted fight. Reichel and Runefang is going down. Certainly the Corpse Guard are buffing this blob of troops, especially the Graveguard, a brutal opponent. But as this battle progresses, as it continues, you can see we're going to be able to dive in, beat these Black Knights down a good bit with our Demigryphs especially, because they're really built to kill units like this. So these sort of cavalry units really stand no chance against Demis, and they're going to get completely dumpstered. And suddenly we do have 2 units of relatively healthy Outriders on station to wail on Isabella, and down she goes, losing hundreds of HP again from those nasty repeater handguns, just melting her down to under 900 and forcing her back. Now the spears here do get committed. They are bogging down these troops, coming in from all flanks to buy the Empire more time, and at this point it's becoming a bit of a pit fight, you can see. But realizing at this point that I might as well try to grind it out, we're going to recommit. You can see our Demigryphs diving into the fray there, spearmen coming in from all sides, and really pinching my opponent. And in this situation, we're going to see that rain of explosives coming in. You can see the Tithe there just getting dumpstered by that volley of high explosive. Over here, these Outriders struggling a little bit. They're down to 17 miles. They've been harassed by annoying zombies now, and they're kind of stuck in this blob. Really annoying. Zombies seem to have like a really good mass. I'm not entirely sure why they snare units so well, but Scabbardeth there does go down. It's going to melt some spears, but with Soulfire going down, another round of bombardments, another round of buffs, keeping my troops in the fight, and suddenly these troops are melting. It's just a few Graveguard at this point holding things together. You can see, in fact, most of these Graveguard going downhill. My opponent not able to get Isabella close, because if he tries to get in there, there's these Outriders right here. And see, if he does pull Isabella in, if he did try to say shut down even Outriders here, we could basically just split, do our pro StarCraft Space Marine splits, bait her down, and smush her. So definitely not where she wants to be in life. The grenades continue pouring in. The Outriders trying to farm up their stats a little bit more, and farm those stats, get into Phase Clan or whatever. But in the meantime, you can see the Graveguard, they're basically gone. There's not much to say at this point. It's the White King kind of bogged down here, smashing the Warrior Priest, but Karl's in there. He's still very healthy. I don't know how far along his buffs were to next cooldown, but at this point, Karl against the White King is a very one-sided affair. And as things start to crumble, you can see it's basically just a bunch of corpse carts, which it makes it look like there's healthy units in there, but it's just corpse carts. Isabella over there getting harassed to death, and it is going to be GG for the Empire. So once again, very well played to Brennus. Good use of baiting with his cavalry and keeping a massive chunk of my, or a very important chunk of my army, really, tied down doing nothing. Keep in mind that for him committing, even if we say that the Chillgeist and the Dire Pack were being committed on the flank to tie down my cavalry, keep in mind he was basically bogging down the Royal Thorgrifites, the Demigryph Knights, my Warrior Priest, and Karl Franz. So a massive chunk of my army was bogged down doing nothing because they were so worried about this cavalry flank. Which was, I didn't want that cavalry getting into my backline of my infantry. More importantly, I didn't want them getting on top of my Outriders. So that was really a tough situation there for Empire. Breaking down this, I do think this is a solid composition for Empire. I do think that with this chaff blob, you can kind of hold the line. Spearmen are okay. People underestimate, I think, how well they can hold, especially if they're not getting flanked. With this sort of build, you're not likely to get flanked very much because you've got demigryphs, you've got the outriders, and you can kind of mulch through your opponent's infantry. If your opponent goes super infantry heavy, which I wouldn't really recommend, but if they do, the outriders just do amazing work. You can see 2 chevrons apiece gained in this game, 163 and 268 kills, just demolishing. And I mean demolishing. You guys saw how badly they murderized units like Graveguard, units like Crypt Ghouls, which Crypt Ghouls lost like half their HP in a single volley. The zombies, the spearmen, none of those units, even the dire pack trying to charge in there, and they lost like half their HP. And keep in mind, that's like 300 gold off of a unit in a single volley of mortar fire, of grenade launcher fire. The units is monstrous. I absolutely love them. I know I've rated them as one of my top units for underrated units. They're so good. Demigryphs, of course, doing a great job. Unfortunately, the Jade Wizard getting caught out really screwed me that game. It could have potentially been the deciding factor, I think. The game came down really close because of that. I think my demigryphs were getting whittled down over time in that grind fest. I do like the fact that those doubled up buff stuff from Karl and the Warrior Priest, and we had a constant stream of Stand Your Ground, Reichland Runefang, the Hammer of Sigmar, the Grand Soulfire, which is not bad against magic damage from, say, units like Shellgeist. And it does some damage to blobs as well. And we had the Grand Shield of Faith and abilities like that, and Benediction keeping my unit's leadership up and working, which is really important. You've just got this constant stream of buffs to leadership, to melee defense, to ward safe, to melee attack, and it just makes it the Empire Meat Grinder, the Empire Blob, is so shockingly effective with those buffs. I don't think there's many other factions. Like, vampires are famous for blobbing, but to be honest, Empire can have some nasty blobs if you know what you're doing, especially with grenade launchers thrown into the mix, because the grenade launchers suddenly mean your opponent's losing their blob. Their blob is getting demolished. And Empire's blob is stupidly strong. So, some cool stuff. It is a build I enjoy. This ability from Brennus here, pretty cool. I think it's original, like trying a more light cavalry or light style with more of an infantry heavy play style. I'll bring Isabella in, which you don't see very often. She's a cool lord, but I personally am not the biggest fan of her. But it was cool to see, especially at the Blood Chalice of Bathory, bringing her back from almost getting sniped into surviving pretty handily, which is pretty cool to see. The White King, also not something you don't see. So I did like that a lot of this build is not something you see every day. It was a pretty original build. I do think, if I would want to critique, it was I think a lack of anti-large. I do think that you could have swapped out, and I know it would have sacrificed a bit of the front line, but if you wanted to, you could have, I think, swapped out something like that point. But you'd probably want Isabella because you probably want the White King because you're bringing Isabella with the Blood Chalice. But if you, for example, dumped like a unit of Graveguard with great weapons and maybe these Black Knights in favor of a unit of Blood Knights, you could scrape together some chevron somewhere, some gold somewhere, like dump a zombie, I guess. I don't know, something like that. But just get like an extra unit of a unit of Blood Knights on the field, and I think this comp would have been in a much more potent position. Even against a build, even against a double demigryphs, like a single unit of Blood Knights backed by Hex Wraiths, with chaff coming in with disruptive bats and dire pack and zombie summons, it can be really, really nasty. So that would have been, I think, the way to go. But regardless, well played to my opponent here. Like I said, this was a fun game, and the other game I got in against him was really fun as well. So thank you for the good games, and I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you found it entertaining. Hope you had a lot of fun watching. If you did, be sure to like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. If you have any comments, any criticism, any questions, as usual, don't hesitate to post them, and I will do my best to respond as soon as I can. I do thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.